Well, thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you to the NACIS organizers for creating this PCD afters and giving me an opportunity to talk to you guys about ArcGIS Maps for Adobe. This is a product I work on, and I'm excited to share with you some of the things we've been doing over the last year. We were here last year and we did a little workshop that maybe some of you attended. But this talk will hopefully give a revision of what the product does and share some of the new features that we've added in. Just a little bit of background. This is an image I came across a few weeks ago. It's on the cover of a book called Framework for Geo Design. Although the book is related to geo design, I think the image speaks to the general process of map making as well. I think we all will agree that map design is as much a scientific and technical process as much as it is an artistic process. We make a lot of decisions based on available technologies, on the data sets that we have, and the story that we want to tell on that map. What features to push back, what features to lift up, if texture should be added, so on and so forth. When we are working with ArcGIS Maps for Adobe, we're always thinking of the mapping community as personas that kind of fall into these groups. We often work with experts in the GIS field, people who are really good at understanding geospatial content, understanding data, doing analysis, doing modeling, and using that in a map. And they often sort of relate to the role of a GIS analyst. But maps are also infographics. And there's a whole other group of users who create maps without knowing the GIS through just the design process. And they typically use design applications, like a lot of you here, they use design applications like Illustrator and Photoshop to create those maps. And then there's this group in the middle, cartographers, most of you in this room, who are kind of really good across both these technologies. You can work with the GIS and you can do a lot of design in Adobe too. So you're really good at moving across these two worlds. Originally, when we released the product, it was kind of oriented more towards the graphic designer and the designer workflows, but over the years, we've kind of introduced a few cartographic tools in there and GIS tools. So the extension was built to connect GIS to design. And what by that I mean is to bring the rich geospatial content that's available through Esri and through its ArcGIS platform to the design world in Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop to make compelling maps. So what is ArcGIS Maps for Adobe? It is an extension, or a plugin, some of you may call it. It installs on top of Illustrator and Photoshop. And what do you need for it? You need Illustrator or Photoshop version 2018 or higher. You don't really need another ArcGIS or Esri program to run this plugin. You do need an Adobe ID because you're going to use that Adobe ID to access Adobe Exchange from where you can install this plugin. Now I know that some of us have had issues with using Adobe Exchange with an enterprise Adobe ID. So as an alternative or second approach, we're also going to make the plugin available on the Esri.com site. Depending upon your operating system, you can download a specific install file and install it on your machine. And when you install it, it is going to show up in Illustrator and Photoshop under the Window Extension menu as ArcGIS Maps for Adobe. When you launch it, the first thing you want to do is you want to activate the plugin. And you do it using one of the 3 available methods. When we were here last year, we just had 2 methods, the complementary and an ArcGIS Online Organization Access. But now we've introduced something called Plus. So the complementary method is something really easy to get started with. You can, it uses an email ID and it sends you an activation code that you can plug in and then activate the plugin. It's really good for educational purposes or if you want to evaluate the tool. But it doesn't have access to all the capabilities in the plugin. Plus is something that's new, and we've introduced it as a low-cost month-to-month subscription that you can sign up for and manage through the extension itself. It gives you access to the full functionality, and then you can use it. Now, ArcGIS Online organization is, many of you might already be using an ArcGIS Online organization to manage your GIS data as a part of a university or maybe the company you work with. So you can use your existing ArcGIS Online organization accounts to sign into this plugin. Once you work with it, the process for creating a map is pretty straightforward. You define a mapping area, and this is an example where I'm kind of using one of the panels, the map board panel, to draw a map around an area. I can also set the map size based on existing presets. Another method to define your mapping area is by importing from an existing data set. And through this plugin, you can access data sets that are hosted in the ArcGIS Online system through layers, hosted feature layers, web maps. You can access living atlas data, or you can even access files from disk, such as CSV files, shape files, text files. GPX is a new file format that we've added. A quick note over here is that depending upon how you've activated the account, you may have access to some data sets or you may not. For example, complimentary users can access only publicly available data sets, but Plus and ArcGIS Online users can access premium data sets that are hosted in Esri.com, or ArcGIS Online users can access content that's hosted within their organization as well. So here is an example of how to import data from a file. I have a simple CSV file. It's a list of the Avengers characters and where they originated from. It's a table with just location information. And I can just simply click and drag that onto the mapboards panel. And you can see it defines the bounds. Not just that, it also adds layers so that you can use it in your compilation workflow. So compilation is about adding more content to this map. So here in this example, you're seeing that you can add different types of content. You can change the base map, and you have access to a subset of base maps. We have 2 vector-based base maps. What that means is you can edit the style of those maps once you download it. You also have access to this special group that we call Maps for Creative Cloud. It's a group of layers that our team manages and maintains. It contains access to natural earth data sets, the OpenStreetMap layers, and USGS. This is something new that we added in the last 6 months, I think. You can also do things like add locations. So here's a simple map where I've changed the base map to the vector base map, and I've added a vector layer from ArcGIS Online, which is the population data. Now, if I wanted to add locations on top of this, I can search for certain locations, and I can search based off of common names. So here I'm searching for universities, and as you can see, you can hover over points and choose to add individual specific universities, or then you can choose to add all of them at once and then use that in your mapping. Something that we will be adding soon, we're hoping to release this in the next couple of days, is the ability to interrogate your data. So we have now a tool which is kind of like your identified tool. It allows you to click in the compilation window and look at the attributes of that data. And then maybe you can use some of those attributes to do things like adding a label. Also, this is something new that we've added to the compilation workflow, is for you to be able to generate data in the plugin. You can run analytics and visualization tools to do things like visualize travel zones. Something new that we're going to add pretty soon is to visualize route to go from point A to point B, or do things like generate buffers. We call them create geographic offsets, and then do visualization of point data. Maybe you want to enrich that data set based on the Esri content. Just a quick note here is that if you're using these tools using your ArcGIS Online organizational account, it does use credits, so you need to make sure that your account is set up correctly and you have the right amount of credits to use the tool. These features are not available to the complementary activation. It's available to ArcGIS Online and Plus users. These are also some advanced tools that are available to the Plus and ArcGIS Online users is to be able to add a feature as, add a layer as a favorite. You can also apply a projection to a map. Or maybe if you have an image, you want to download it at a higher resolution, you can set that up in the compilation window. The idea of the compilation window is to gather maps from these resources as assets that you can then download to your design application like Illustrator and Photoshop. So once you've done that, you can sync that map and use your favorite design tool to style it. So here in this example, since I had added all vector content, you can see that the downloaded file is grouped based on the symbology and the layers that were in that map. And now I'm just using standard Illustrator workflows to turn objects on and off. I can perhaps select objects and change its appearance. So once they're in Illustrator, you can style them using just your standard Illustrator tools. There's a small difference between how this works in Illustrator versus Photoshop. In Illustrator, the map is down, depending on the content that you've added. If you've added vectors, the map is downloaded as a vector artwork. In Photoshop, it's downloaded as a map image that you can then edit. So that's just something to be mindful of. Here I'm just changing the appearance, smoothing some of the lines. We also have some tools to help you with automated changes for changing the appearance of your map. A lot of the users we work with, and maybe some of you here also, use symbol libraries or libraries in Illustrator to manage your assets. So brush libraries, symbol libraries, swatch libraries. If there is a workflow where you need to apply these automatically to a group of features, then you can use our processes window to run a process and apply those assets to your map. Also, something new that we added in our last release is the ability to create a map legend. So once you have created your map and you've styled it the way you wanted, if you wanted to add like a map key or a legend to your map, then you can run this process called add legend. It basically takes your stylized elements and it creates a legend for you. This is something that we're currently actively working on, and I know that this has been asked heavily around here, is the ability to work with maps that were designed and authored in ArcGIS Pro. So we now are sort of coming up with a workflow where you can export a map or a layout out of ArcGIS Pro in a format that can be imported into Illustrator using this plugin. And then once it's in Illustrator, it's the same idea that the layers are going to be grouped by symbology or the layering that you had, so you can style them as you want. I kind of want to close on this quote here. This is something that I saw at an exhibition last year at the Boston Public Library at the Leventhal Map Gallery. I'm really excited that they're here this year and they're presenting. That's like great stuff. But you can read all of it. I'm going to read the first sentence, that an artist's inspiration arises from internal and external sources, perceived and unconscious. It's my hope that we all, as artists, as geographers, as cartographers, can see this tool as a way to get access to some of those sources to create beautiful maps. So thank you for your attention. I also want to really quickly thank my team for their support, especially Sarah Bell and Clint Loveman, maybe if you're listening. Thank you for your support in helping me prepare for this. Thank you.